Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show, the podcast that engages and informs you for success in today's marketplace. It's the show that will make you a better marketer with trends, tactics, and inspiration from experts and industry leaders. If you're wanting to impact your personal success and position your bank as the best choice in your market, you're in the right place. Now let's dive into today's show with your hosts, Chris and Dan.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bank Marketing Show. I'm Dan, and welcome, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Dan?
It's going well.
Good.
So, today we've got a really interesting topic here on another way to surprise and delight your customers with different types of marketing campaigns that bigger banks, digital banks are going to have a much harder time doing. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, me too, Dan. As you and I were prepping for this episode, I was realizing, and hopefully our listeners realize this, the last several of our episodes have largely been around digital advertising tactics, kind of new, methodologies there, AI discussions, those types of things. We're going to kind of set all of that on the shelf for the moment. All of those things are relevant in the march out of the tactics that we're going to talk about today, and kind of how to expound on them and utilize them in your marketing. But we're really talking about boots on the ground today. I think community engagement. Yep. I like what you said there. These are things that the national banks, even with their local branches around you, are not going to be doing, and which is significant in differentiation and identification of your own brand personality and who you are.
Yeah, and we talk a lot here about using your competitive advantage against the near trillion dollar banks out there and the fintechs out there is your community involvement. And so we talk a lot here about use that in your marketing. Talk about it. Talk about the super local stuff that you do. And your homepage shouldn't be a stock image. It should be a picture of like the local monument, that type of stuff that the really big banks are not going to do. And I think we're going to talk through here. If you're listening to this, you've seen the the title of the episode in your podcast feed. We're going to talk about kind of guerrilla marketing here today, which is more about kind of surprise, creativity, marketing that happens. You said boots on the ground, that happens in the real world, and better than talking about your local community on your website is actually going out into your local community and doing marketing there. Over and above, you've probably got sponsorships and signage different places, but this is a way for you to get your people out there in between the parades and the local fairs and the type of stuff that you're already out to do.
Yeah, and these are things that your institution can generate.
Yeah,
that I like that you said that in between the other big events or small events that you're a part of, or should be a part of. These are those, Dan, and we also kind of realized, again, as you and I were talking about this and prepping for the episode, that these are really built for word of mouth. And everybody loves, word of mouth is the ultimate marketing.
Yeah.
It should be positive word of mouth, right?
And stuff that spreads word of mouth in real life, right, it turned into a social post can be the type of stuff that goes viral or gets a lot more reach than your normal posts.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
The more there's this also ties back to digital in that way of it's not just offline, but it's great stories to post online that will get more traction than just your open up a checking account today.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, you've already used the word surprise a couple of times. So I think as we were leading in today, wanted to really talking about kind of doing the unexpected or something different, those types of things, which is surprise and delight as a tactic. And really, really love that. It's also energizing for your people, and your community. And there's really no downsides to this other than the fact that it takes some time and effort.
Yeah, but it's a trade-off, right? This guerrilla marketing tactics tend to take more time from your personnel, but much less budget usually than pumping thousands of dollars into a Google Ads campaign. So there's a trade-off, right?
Yep.
So and I think the best, we always say like the best marketing programs have different layers of stuff. So I don't think any of this is to replace anything that you're doing, but can you layer in a few of these campaigns a year and just give different ways for people to find you, see you, create more word of mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's that very well said. And it's that surprise and delight. You also labeled this as it's hyper local, which again is that, we're not trying to, reach the masses. We're not trying to do or be all things to all people. We're trying to be out in the community, that boots on the ground, and be who we are, and reflect that community culture that does make a difference. And this can even be in this can be in a larger city. It's just a portion of it, So this isn't relevant only to banks that are in small town rural areas. It obviously is fitting for that, but this can be in the St. Louis and the Atlanta, markets as well. It's just, being again hyper local focused. Yeah. And where you have reach around your branches and those types.
Not Atlanta, but your block in Atlanta. If you're in a big city, or if you're in a small town, you probably have one block, right? But
right.
What do you know about that? What do you know that people need, right? We're going to talk through a bunch of examples today, but it can be as simple as just buying everybody coffee, right? Like, buy out the coffee shop for the morning, and everybody that comes in gets a free coffee. It doesn't cost you that much. Even better if the coffee shop is a customer of yours.
If they're a client, yeah.
Yeah, and it might be a couple $100 in coffee, but compared to your signage at a ballpark or stadium or something, like it's pretty cheap and memorable, and something that people remember and create good vibes. It's little things like that. So
yeah.
So let's talk about like kind of talked about what guerrilla marketing is, but I think there's a few core things that. And we've kind of touched on them already, but surprise and delight, right? Do something unexpected, be hyper local, do something inherent to your community. If you're in a small town, don't go drive to the big town and get some food that only makes sense. That I'm making this up.
Yeah.
But buy something locally that something to create that word of mouth, create some way for people to share it, right? If you're giving away free coffee, people are gonna naturally text their friends or post on social, hey, stop by this coffee shop because the bank's buying free coffee this morning.
Right. So, and you're talking about shareability, not only for us as the bank with things that we can share on our own social, et cetera, and that's certainly of benefit, and we'll talk about that. But you're talking about shareability for the others that are involved in it. And that's a great, or something you're doing for a nonprofit. And it's going to naturally be a piece that they can share on their social and amongst their channels.
And we talked, we had our brand ambassador episode recently, and we kind of made the point that people don't want to follow banks. People don't want to necessarily engage with not just banks, but company posts. And so if you can do something that gets people talking about the bank on their own feeds, more people are going to see it.
And in humanized terms.
Yeah. And that's what kind of creates that virality. But sure, like if I got a free coffee, I'd probably post and say, hey, this, so-and-so bank was giving out free coffees, head down there. Love that they're part of the community. And, other people are going to share that. And that's the type of thing, and then this is, where like hashtags come in, and there's a lot you can do with it, but just simply by being there, you're going to create that shareability.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the last one is just, make sure you're going to do this because you're a bank, right? But make sure you're focused on compliance with it. Don't give away, trying to come up with a bad compliance example, but
I think, Dan, one would be being cautious of don't do repeated community-based events only in one neighborhood area.
Yeah,
for example, that's these are compliance things that as those in the banking industry we know and should know, but plan them out well and be cognizant of things like that. These need to be things that are opportunistic for all people.
Yeah, you could be in the coffee shop one day, and then you could take coffee somewhere else, to another town that doesn't have a coffee shop for the next one.
Yeah,
you can extend a lot of almost any idea, right? You can extend to different areas, but that's where your kind of hyper local knowledge will come in.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, so being cognizant of that is a good good principle for what we're talking about, for sure. Yeah.
Well, let's, Chris, I know when we were prepping, you had a couple, you had an example or two from banks you worked with on this stuff. So let's get into some, get into some examples. And, I think folks listening can borrow these, adapt them for your own area, or hope might inspire you to come up with other things.
Absolutely. Well, we're recording this right around the time is Community Bank Week. And so one of our clients is having had a food coffee truck, at a different location of theirs every day, during the course of the week. And turned out really cool, but it's not just parking a food truck in the parking lot and going, whatever. They're doing it proactively, and kind of, again, back to our episode, Dan, of utilizing your team as ambassadors. They're really getting their team at each of those locations to invite your customers, invite your friends, invite community members, ask the mayor to come by, ask the superintendent at the school to come by, whatever it is. And being intentional about that doesn't cost a ton of money, creates a lot of that community value. It's not a compliance issue unless you serve bad food or something. Just kidding. But, yeah, serve good sandwiches, whatever it is. But it's not, it's not rocket science. And I do think the food truck company actually did happen to be a customer as well. So that, you mentioned that a little while ago, worked out well. But again, that's not rocket science. It's not a fortune. It is engaging with your team and created, a lot of social opportunities, again, because they were kind of in each of the areas were inviting local community leaders and teachers and those types of things. Man, it worked great. Did they have hundreds of people come out? No. Did they have dozens of people come out and ones that were really good to be connected with? Yes, they did. So again, I think it's about being realistic about the goals. You're not going to sell out the stadium. This isn't,
this is it depends on the
theater.
Town, right? It depends on the town. I used to work with a bank that they're in a town of about 750, and they had a open house every year that over 100, 150 people would attend every year. And, they had a local barbecue place come out and cook up some pork, and they involved all the local businesses. And after they did it for a couple of years, it turned into this big thing that everybody looked forward to.
I was going to say that they created their own community event. That's really cool.
And it's marketing, right?
Yeah.
It's not like an ad campaign like you think about, but it's a marketing event. And I think, what we're talking about today is this mix of marketing that doesn't need guerrilla marketing, kind of unexpected things that don't quite feel like marketing. It should feel like you're doing something really nice for the community, and at the end of the day, it's marketing, but you're giving food or cheap food or giving out free coffee, those types of things. And it's unexpected. Makes people happy. And, you're not saying, open up an account and we'll give you a free coffee. Here's a laptop. You're just giving away the free coffee and creating goodwill.
Yep, that's right. So yeah, I like that one. I mean, the town is small enough that creates a town event. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
A few minutes ago, I mentioned teachers, and Dan, another example here that it brought to mind is one of our bank clients that was having, I think it was a 100-year anniversary, and so what they did over the course of like a quarter, what was giveaways of like $100 worth of classroom supplies, et cetera, to 10 different teachers, and they did that, and it was a big deal, and it was real. This wasn't fake or contrived, because these were supplies that were going into some classrooms that really needed the extra help. And to be honest, I think they gave a good bit more than $100 worth, to each one was really the truth of it, but that was really great. And they got people on their team at the bank, to be a part of that and taking things out to the schools and those types of things. And they really lifted up those teachers on their social media and those types of things. So they made it wasn't about, hey, look, we're a bank. It was more about, hey, these teachers are heroes, essentially.
Yeah.
And
I worked with a bank that something similar, where they had a social media campaign, and they started to do that every year. at the beginning of the school year, and it was nominate your favorite teacher. And then they gave the winner a gift card, and they probably gave, the top 3 or 4 winners gift cards. But the idea was, you're doing this on the bank social media feed, but then you get people really engaged.
Yep.
And they're forwarding the post they're tagging teachers on the Facebook page. They're forwarding to their friends to nominate teachers. And it really it worked well for them because they were in a small enough town where there's, one school at each level, and it was pretty tight knit. So everybody with kids in the community at least knew the teachers, and and it showcased goodwill, right? And it's another. Both these things are marketing campaigns, but they don't feel like it.
Yeah, I love that. All right, can I show the cookbook now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd been waiting to do this.
You're holding on to that thing.
I know it. So, yeah, this was another really cool. Absolutely a guerrilla marketing idea, but it was just a neat thing to do. So one of our clients put together a cookbook like this, and it was really cool. So it was based on different categories of things, just like any other good cookbook. But the contributors to all of the recipes obviously were employees of the bank. So it took them a while to get all of this and gather this information together, but it made it really contributory by the employees of the bank. So, bank leadership really kind of rallied everybody around doing this and all of that. Then our team here, because they were clients of ours, did the layout for it and all of that, but it's not, enormously complicated. And then they printed enough of them to give them out to key customers, bank leaders, community leaders, tons of folks. And they ended up, I think I told you they had to do a reprint. I think they actually had to do a couple of reprints on these. Not to mention, just like any kind of good swag or something, this is something that sticks around, and it's a good piece. My wife uses it. I told her about it, and she's like, "You got one of those from your client, right?" I love good recipes. I did. So, I got one, and I think my mom got one. Anyway.
Well, and just in our house, we've got 2 or 3 spiral bound cookbooks just like that from, I think one of them is from my wife's high school volleyball team. Something, there's something like that, where just this cookbook has just stuck around for 20 plus years.
Yep.
And, that's the type, right. It's the type of thing, it just sticks around.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little reminder of this bank's, involvement in the community. And it's not recipes they collected off the internet. It's local people's stuff.
Oh, yeah. So everybody at the bank that had one in the book wanted to talk about it. And they told their friends about it and all that, so it created all this buzz that was honestly well beyond, and this bank is in 6 markets, kind of across half of a state. And so it's spread, man. It was really a cool idea.
Yeah, I worked with the bank. Actually, it's a similar thing, but they didn't do the book, but they had a social media campaign of a featured recipe every month or every week from an employee, and then customers started submitting recipes, and then they started somebody would actually make the recipe and bring it into the bank. So there'd be cookies there, or even they were bringing in, crock pots of, crock pot stuff, because there was a crock pot casserole kind of recipe, and they would, have it at the bank, and they'd say, come on in, get a sample of this thing. And, people would come in and ask for the recipes, and it just created that culture. So you don't have to go as far as printing the book, but there's some real benefits of that. But there's ways you can kind of get started, or maybe you could do that on your social for a year, and then you've got, might end up with 50 recipes you can put into a book.
Yeah.
I was playing around with ChatGPT, as I do before, and I asked it to go do some research on other examples. So a couple other interesting ones that popped up. I think a lot of these are real world things. And I encourage you to go do some Googling or ChatGPTing, but it's the coffee cart came up a lot that we've talked about. One other example that was interesting was umbrellas, and this probably worked because it was probably a bigger city, but they would just hand out free umbrellas in front of their branch on a rainy day.
On a rainy day, yeah.
Yeah, wow. And just see people walking by without an umbrella. Here, have an umbrella. Taking, obviously you have to get those things printed in advance, but it's really taking advantage of a moment. right? So I'm thinking too to like a conference I was at. Wasn't a bank marketing thing, but it was a conference I was at. They have all these like freebie giveaways, and the most popular item, it was where was it? It's in Vegas or Denver, somewhere really, really dry. And, a booth at the conference is giving away like chapstick, which like if you've traveled to like Denver in the winter or Vegas literally anytime, like your lips instantly dry.
Right.
And everybody needs to go seek out some chapstick. But they knew that because they'd been there before and they had this. And so like it could be, what's the equivalent of that for you? Like little bottles of sunscreen at the county fair because people have forgotten it. Like, think about what people need and be there with it.
Yeah. Dan, I know one of the examples that I saw on the GPT that you generated too, it was called this Neighbor Good Challenge. And this one, one of the cool things about this one was also it's a digital, this can be done on digital platform. This is digital guerrilla marketing too. But this Neighbor Good Challenge was to donate $5 to a food bank every time someone posts like a good deed photo with the bank hashtag. You have to put parameters and constraints about that and time limit. But man, what a great way to do that. That's benefiting the food bank. The bank is involved in that, and lots of people are talking about it on their social.
Yeah.
And hashtagging. That one was a great idea.
Yeah. Instead of just, most banks are probably quietly donating to their local food banks, but this is a good way to encourage other, it's a marketing campaign, but you could set it up as like donate $5 and we will match it. And so you're still making your donation, but you're getting more for the food bank by encouraging others to do the same and then turning it into a social media campaign.
Well, and nonprofit organizations, as we all know, are always in need of support. And what a better way to do that? Oftentimes we talk to our bank clients, Dan, about being a pillar of the community. And if you're going to be, as a bank, if you're going to be a pillar of the community, then there's an inherent responsibility to the community, I think, with that. And some of these guerrilla marketing tactic things that can also provide benefit, or like you say, maybe even compound benefit, to organizations or schools or those types of things that can do that. And again, I want to encourage the perspective of the bank, not to stand there and go, look how great we are. That's not the right perspective. It's look how great this organization is, or this teacher, or this whatever the case may be.
Look how great our community is. Look how great this specific thing
there you go.
is.
Yep.
And right. And then by doing that, you're putting yourself in a leadership position. And
you're raising the tide. That's right.
Great leaders don't have to promote themselves, right? Like, you should take that tack of your bank's being a pillar. Pillars are pretty obvious things. You don't need to say we're a pillar, right? But you can show that you're a pillar by doing that and creating other pillars, right? Raising up, strengthening the foundation of the community.
Yeah. So, Dan, as we move toward wrap up here, I know one of the key things for marketers and bankers is measurability. And, so how do we track all these things? And so much of what we've talked about today is it feels good. It gets, potentially lots of engagement, either in person or even across digital platforms. So what are some thoughts about, how do we measure this? How do we actually make it so that it's worth repeating, for one thing? So what are some ways, Dan, that can be done with the kind of guerrilla tactics that we're talking about?
Yeah, a couple of things there. Like one, measurement. The easiest way, right, is like if you're promoting your guerrilla campaign on social media, you're just watching the same metrics as your other social media campaigns, but you're probably getting a lot more hits for this, a lot more shares.
Undoubtedly.
You could use a hashtag, but even without that, it's just you can just look at the engagement on each of your posts and compare it to what your normal engagement is. If you have a brand like listening tool, because part of like these guerrilla campaigns is not just the engagement on your bank's posts, but it's how many times did things get shared? How many times did the bank get tagged that month? Because customers or people in the community may not share the bank's post. They may just write a post of their own that says, hey, so-and-so bank did this, thanks. So you got to like kind of look at brand mentions and tags, but it's gonna do better than your normal run-of-the-mill posts.
Yeah.
But I think more important is to kind of, if you do campaigns like this on a regular basis, once a quarter, twice a year, that will help the bank kind of become known for it as well. Right. And then your future campaigns are going to perform better. Oh, that's the bank that we got that free coffee a few months ago. Oh, and now they're giving away the sunscreen at the fair. Like, and over time, if you're in the community, you can't ignore that. And, if you're in the community, not a customer of the bank, you're going to eventually start thinking, oh, well, this bank seems to be doing more. Like, I'm frustrated with my bank. I'm thinking about moving over. So getting back to metric, like I think there's like the vanity metrics of engagement and clicks and shares and impressions that happen in the short term. But I think you've also got to think the long term too, of what are you're tracking your account opens probably, but look at what it looks like a few weeks after each campaign, and some softer metrics like that will work their way in.
Yeah. How does this affect brand with a big B? Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of that too is you come up with one of these great ideas, and having marketing, and maybe it's a couple of people that are responsible also for a debriefing of this. Yeah. So we did the food truck thing, we did the cookout thing, we did the giveaways to the teachers thing, we did the donation thing, we did all these, and we've obviously only scratched the surface on the possibility of ideas here, but to take that, have a couple of folks that are responsible for that, debrief from it, what went well, what didn't, how else could we have utilized marketing before, during, or after this, and do that like with any other good campaign planning, so then, okay, what's now our next step? Okay, well, hey, that was great. Let's commit to, we're going to do this again next September. Or this needs to be a monthly thing, or whatever, depending on what the
think
tactic
bigger
is.
and better. If you're doing that, teacher nomination gift card next year, do it a little longer, make it a bigger gift card. Like, how do you learn and make it grow next time?
Yeah. Or is this a thing that, I'll make this up, but it's tied to community growth, et cetera. So maybe we can invite all the contractors, to come by mid-afternoon, on a time that works for them, and have some other kind of thing. And, because we noticed there were a few contractors that came by for this thing, or whatever the case may be, but it's niching in that thinking, of how can we do this and do it better? Because of course, at the end of the day, the bank needs to benefit from it, either from, like you say, from a brand standpoint, from a social and other growth engagement standpoint. So doing that and really looking at how to quote unquote measure it.
Right.
Yeah. And so the engagement metrics, like you were talking about, all the way to how many people came by, or what did this do, and how can we do that better, and plan that out, and then let's make it repeatable.
Yeah. And I mean, the good news is, right, like with a digital campaign, you're spending a couple $1,000s a month every month, and that urgency of showing ROI is like, is there. Every month that goes on that you're not getting good results is like, gets harder and harder to prove. It adds more stress to the marketing team. Like, but with a campaign like this, they're relatively quick. They don't cost a lot of money. Yes, there's time involved, but the justification is a little bit different, and it's much clearer to the, I think the average bank leadership team of, we absolutely should be out in the community promoting these things. And, so I think for guerrilla campaigns like this, the digital metrics, the hard metrics are almost a secondary, a secondary thing. Like you know that it's got impact, and so, but on digital, it's like you have to really see the numbers to prove the ROI. Yeah, I think it's a different calculus here, and hopefully you can get far enough in, get a couple campaigns going, and it becomes easier to really see the benefit it has for the bank.
There you go. Well, Dan, this has been great. It was fun giving out lots of examples, and you and I have gotten to see those and be a part of those over the years with our clients as well. But even going back to the principles of this that you introduced, the surprise and delight, and the very pointed local focus, shareability, those type of things are what can make all of this stuff enormously successful. So, and I don't want to fail to mention as well, as our agency, and I know this is the case with yours as well, has worked with a wide variety of asset-sized banks over the years and continues to do that. Part of what we hear from marketing is that, hey, because you guys are handling the technical elements of our marketing, then it frees us up to go and be boots on the ground and do this kind of, community engagement and sponsorships and local involvement and being there. And that's smart business for marketing to me, whether you have a 10-person marketing department or whether it's half of what you do is marketing. And from leadership to hear that, hey, the benefit of outsourcing and having partners doing this lets us do this guerrilla marketing that is really, really impactful. It gives us content, it's obviously community engagement. And what we talked about at the beginning, it builds word of mouth.
Yeah.
So
keep your team focused on the core stuff that only you can do in your local community and free up the other stuff.
There you go.
Yep.
Good deal, Dan. Well, yeah. So I know we want to like to reiterate to everybody, first of all, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast here, take a moment and be sure to do that. And, whether it's Spotify or iHeart or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you're listening, check us out on YouTube, and you can catch us visually there if you haven't, and can connect with all of these episodes and resources, and connect with Dan and I with any questions or thought sharing at bankmarketingshow.com, and also sign up there for Bank Marketing Minute, which is our corresponding really juicy tidbits is an awful way to say that, Dan, but but it's a great additional resource that you can digest in a quick moment that's kind of catapults on some of the things we talked about here on the podcast.
Yeah.
So
hope to see you all there in the subscriber list.
There you go. Thanks a lot, Dan. Good stuff today.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next time.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. To go deeper or get access to some of the valuable nuggets from today's show, go to bankmarketingshow.com. There you'll find episodes, links to resources, and much more. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And join us next time.